Move with the wind and you'll never be heard. It's a favorite quote of one of the most popular and recognizable and yet quietest of the G.I. Joes. I'm talking, of course, about Snake Eyes. Today we're taking a deep dive into this mysterious character, what we know of his backstory, what we might expect from the future. How about this? Is it Snake Dash Eyes or Snake Eyes? And what's that red mark on his shoulder? Before we begin, let me thank you for watching JLS Comics and pressing play. If you like videos like this, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you want, the subscribe button as well, and share this on your social media. I have comic book and superhero content that I upload weekly. Alright, with that out of the way, let's jump into our Snake Eyes story. Ever since Snake Eyes first debuted as a Hasbro action figure, and then in comic book form in G.I Joe #1 all the way back in 1982, Snake Eyes has remained as popular as he is dangerous. Part of his appeal is his elusiveness. Most of his professional career and personal life are locked behind a classified designation wall. What we do know, though, is that prior to his recruitment by Hawk into the G.I. Joes, Snake Eyes served in Special Ops prior to JSOC for the Army's Delta Force. After leaving his service as an operative at the end of the war, Snake Eyes trained with Thomas Arashikage, Storm Shadow's ancestral Arashikage ninja clan. Snake Eyes' entire family was killed in a horrific car accident, and this is what prompted his journey to Japan, and thus an invitation to join the ancient Arashikage. Snake Eyes first appeared in G.I. Joe #21, the famous silent issue. Storm Shadow is the literal definition of Arashikage. But what of Snake Eyes? Where did that code name come from? Before Snake Eyes went off to war, he told his father he'd only need luck. Well, his dad replied and said that luck eventually runs out and what you're left with is Snake Eyes. But his real name we'll probably never know. Larry Hama, the creator, said this: "I never came up with a real name for Snake Eyes. Better to keep the mystery in my own head." Okay, back to the story. So under the tutelage of Hardmaster, the two trained side by side. However, Snake Eyes' abilities quickly surpassed that of Storm Shadow and animosity grew. One day during a night class, an arrow flew through the dojo window and killed Hardmaster. It was later that we learned that it was an agent of Cobra Commander named Zartan who fired that arrow that he had stolen from Storm Shadow to frame him, and that the arrow was actually meant for Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes left after that tragedy and headed to America, where he found residence in the High Sierras. There he befriended a wolf that he named Timber. It was here that Hawk found him when they were actively recruiting for the Joes. Snake Eyes was also part of the American branch of Action Force, the British continuity of G.I. Joe, published by Marvel UK. Shortly thereafter, Snake Eyes first laid his eyes upon Scarlet. She was training cadets and found this mysterious soldier intriguing. In one of their first missions, a hostage rescue mission, their helicopter engine stalled and the pilots ordered to bail out. Scarlet was trapped and Snake Eyes stayed on to try to save her, but the aviation fuel ignited and a blast of flaming fuel shattered through the canopy, hitting Snake Eyes in the face, which disfigured him and damaged his vocal cords, causing him to be mute. But he decided to continue the mission anyways. He could have been DC'd with a full pension. Later, he decided to continue with the G.I. Joe team, adopting the black uniform and a mask, but back then he was only a commando, not a ninja just yet. Okay, let me pause here. First, the real-world practical reason that Snake Eyes wears black was that it was a cost-saving mechanism for Hasbro. Their toy manufacturers could use less paint if the figure was black, same with the mask, easier application. Second, Snake Eyes' origin has some variation depending on the medium, the writer, the publisher, but this weaves together what I told you, the most generally accepted premise. Here's a wacky one for you in terms of his origins. Cobra attacked Washington, D.C. with hacked Transformers, and it was a blast from a Transformer weapon that hit him in the face and caused him to be disfigured. Yep, that happened. His Paramount Studios movie origin is also somewhat different, but we're focusing on the primary source material here, so let's get back to the story again. Not long after Cobra captured Scarlet and held her captive at Silent Castle, a Cobra stronghold that was once prized by Cobra Commander, being that Scarlet was all that he had in the world other than himself, Snake Eyes went on a one-man mission to rescue her. The defeat was so bad for Cobra Commander that he ordered the castle shut down and eventually traded it away to Destro. It was at a later point that he updated himself to incorporate his ninja training into his military training. He did this by using ninjutsu, swords, shurikens. Snake Eyes is proficient in hand-to-hand combat, CQB, NATO weaponry, edge weapons, escape and evasion, call it E&E, infiltration, demolition, survival, and he's also experienced in things like herbal medicines. He can even pretend to be dead with his mastery over a technique called the Sleeping Phoenix technique. All this said, he favors his grenades, a 9mm Uzi submachine gun, and a hand-forged katana. When Devil's Due took over publishing the licensed content, they wrote that Timber had died and that Snake Eyes had adopted a new wolf pup. It was also written that after he left service, Snake Eyes and Scarlet were engaged and were set to be married, but on their wedding day, Snake Eyes pulled a runaway bride and no-showed the wedding. Basically, the story is that he realized he wouldn't be happy settling down and living the normal life. Right around the time of the wedding, Snake Eyes' apprentice, the last of the Arashikage, Ophelia, is killed by Firefly, and Snake Eyes is just racked with grief. And in G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, also by Devil's Due, the Joes formed up again, and Scarlet and Snake Eyes found a way to reconcile and were ultimately re-engaged. After Devil's Due, IDW Publishing bought the rights for the property and continued on where Marvel ended their run. Once again scribed by Larry Hama, the IDW run wiped out pretty much anything that happened with Devil's Due. Currently, Snake Eyes is dead and Don Moreno has taken up the mantle as the new Snake Eyes. As you can see, Snake Eyes is equal parts mystery, fascinating, and cool. He's not the perfect hero, and that is something that we can all relate to, I would think, dragging around those, events from our past. In a 1998 interview, creator Larry Hama said this about Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. Snake Eyes is the damaged other who doesn't fit in. He drags his past around with him like a heavy steamer trunk, and that's easy for me to relate to. Storm Shadow is more of a Zen warrior. He's more of the ideal to work towards. Actually, most of the characters are based on real people, living and dead, some personal friends, and some famous public personalities. G.I Joe, The Rise of Cobra, and G.I Joe Retaliation featured Ray Park as Snake Eyes. But Robert Schwenke, who did RED, which is Retired Extremely Dangerous, RIPD, and Allegiant, is in early talks to direct Paramount's G.I Joe spin-off, Snake Eyes. Back in May of 2018, we talked about this, and then there was nothing. Now it looks like the studio is moving forward. Beauty and the Beast writer Evan Spiliotopoulos is going to have to figure that out. The movie, rumored to be simply titled Snake Eyes, is slated for release in the spring of 2020. So how about that Snake Eyes, Snake-Eyes question? Let me know what you think. Toys bearing the name Snake-Eyes were produced in 85, 93, 1994, and 2000. Toys featuring the name Snake Eyes were made in 82, 89, 91, 97, and 2002. And as of 2018, there are around 70 different action figure versions of Snake Eyes. And finally, what's that red mark on his shoulder? Let's answer that question. Well, this and markings like it come from the Chinese Book of Changes, also known as the I Ching, written around the year 9 BCE. Larry Hama described his decision to use it best, and I quote, "I got to the end of A Real American Hero number 21 and got the idea to use the matching hexagrams bit. I didn't even really know what the connection was between the two characters at the time, but that was the first link. Hexagram 65 of the I Ching, Chi-Chi, is called After Completion. It connotes the instability of perfection because of the trigram Kan, water, strives to move downwards, while the trigram Li, fire, pushes upwards. I actually chose that hexagram because the symmetry made it easier to remember, but the meaning turned out to be synchronistically apt. Jung would have been approved." Talking about Carl Jung. And that, my friends, is the origin and history of Snake Eyes. Did I miss something you feel is important? Have a question or idea for a future history video? Go ahead and let me know in the comments or tweet me at comicsjls and I'll add it to the list. As always, thanks for watching, subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.